Before we were talking about the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and astrotheological correspondences, and now we have reached Cancer. Be thou open. And the Devil's Pulpit, Reverend Robert Taylor shows that Jesus is referred to as the cockchafer or the beetle, because in ancient Egypt that scarab beetle is what mimics on a small microcosmic level the same pattern that the sun does. Just gonna check, make sure that my mics are all working well. Microphone and speaker, cool, sounds great. Remember, we, as above, so below, uses figurative language and aspects. So when we see in the little beetle what it does with the dung beetle, rolling up the dung and kind of resurrecting out of its own self through its nest and self-metamorphosis to keep renewing, he analyzed that and showed that that happens with the sun as well, in a sense, and how Jesus is referred to as the Lamb of God. He's referred to as the Lion of the tribe of Judah, with he is the exaltation when he's illuminated and they see Moses and Elijah to his left and right. He's the fisher of men. So we have all these correspondences, but we have even more. We have one for, of course, Cancer. He's the scarab, cockchafer, or even with the horse god. Why? Born, and this is all from Reverend Robert Taylor, born from Mother Mary. Mare means horse, but not in a bad way. This is ridiculous to think that, this is a deeply mystical interpretation that the 12 Zodiac are hidden within the story, and he's usually named all of them or has a direct association with them. So like Judas being betrayer and kissing him with the kiss mark, that's super obvious, right? Scorpio, fisher of men, Pisces, Lamb of God, Aries. But then more subtle aspects of the story, like when he rebels against his parents, or when they hurry up and take up their initiative on the spiritual journey of intuition, as we talked last time. There's countless examples where it's just slightly hidden from the naked eye. So let's take a look into Cancer, and let's see what this book deciphers. My religion is kindness. So the entry of the sun of the Cancer on June 21st each year marks the time of the summer solstice, the point of the sun's maximum northerly declination and the longest day of the year in the northern hemisphere. From this point onwards, the days will gradually but inexorably shorten as the sun sinks lower in the sky. That is what Manilius calls the hinge of the year, the blazing turning point when the sun recalled and bends back the length of day. This notion of reversal seems common to all creatures, including the tortoise, the crawfish, and the lobster. So sometimes in other stories you hear about the tortoise, like in the Upanishads, withdraw your senses in like a tortoise. The 5 senses, the head, the 2 arms, the 2 legs. That is such a beautiful meditation technique. Because what does that exactly mean? Well, to me, it's always math. To me, I always say that in the end of all things, you could see and conceptualize by just minusing and addition. So like, if you minus outside, hearing, sight, feeling, and a state of focus on the internal perceiver of that, the part of you that would actually be the one that feels that, right? Because now you're not noticing what's being felt, right? Normally we're like, I feel the table, I hear someone talking, and you're noticing this, and then you're maybe, you're tasting. But if we shift the focus like a tortoise to the one who's actually, pulling the legs and the head, and try to find exactly what part of you is actually experiencing these things. Because at that point, it's almost like you close the circuit, or you become 0 point. I might not be using the right term. I'm still trying to find the right terminology to find exactly what this is, but it's almost like touch and counter space. And then everything becomes resolved. So there's always that resolving factor of that Christic energy within ourselves, which is a seed, that seed of metaphor, right? Because it's like the smallest thing, but it gives birth to all of this sight, and not in a solipsism way, right? We're talking each individual torus field microcosm has an individual connection and effect on the collective realm. See, like a lot of people don't like to respect that we all have separate torus fields eternally, and they may see that that's like an illusion, like separation is just a temporary illusion, or that everything's fake. You can go down even more, like to more nihilistic, where like some people think that they're the only torus field in existence, like a sense of like almost like depersonalization, right? So there's a difference between true spiritual conquering, resurrecting, alchemy, and just plain depersonalization. Like depersonalization, desensitization of the empathetic centers and sympathy centers and all these things, and just becoming like aloof. These might be signs of actual like trauma and damage rather than actual spiritual elevation. And in the New Age movement and a lot of like since around like 2010, you know, a lot of information has just been pumped out into the collective without any filtration of you know, what school does this come from? What philosophy does this come from? So that's why people sometimes do say that there is no real correct way to identify the universal cause. You know, there's no way to actually, like some people say, just call it source or this or that. This is just because there's just so many different schools and perspectives where in some of them, you know, God is kind of completely demarbleized into its creation and forgets itself, has no idea what's going on anymore. So then that removes any sense of intelligence, right? Because the most intelligent being in an existence has created a trap for itself. Let's say if you go like the Alan Watts school, right? Like, you know, there is no actual, because it is so absorbed in Maya, there is no part of it that's out of it. But Walter Russell always showed and proved that outside of the torus field and the sine wave and all of our individual souls is a supreme soul, or a supreme mind, or the one mind that produces the many minds and doesn't get lost or absorbed in it. That's what all the scriptures are trying to say when Jesus is walking on water, or Krishna is walking on water, or not walking on water, but doing some type of miracle, standing on 7 snakes' heads, holding up mountains. You know, this is showing that spirit is not lost in matter. You know, that supreme consciousness is beyond us, in a sense that I get to have my own personal life now eternally, and have kind of allowed that unconscious, super conscious aspect of ourselves. See, we keep calling it unconscious. Who are we to say that? You know, like it is unconscious in the sense that it's automated, but to call it unconscious and even beyond it, some terms may get confused. So in deep esotericism, especially where you say the Vaishnava tradition or even esoteric Christianity, we know that the sun is the symbol of the source. And that sun being the symbol of the source encapsulates all of the spiritual values and qualities in it, regardless of, even though it just appears, oh, it just gives us day and night, comes from spring to summer to fall to winter, just because these don't mean anything. These are just, you know, that is not true. That is the fingerprint or the actual essence stamped into creation eternally. At the most, maybe some of these, if inorganically, organically, some of these seasons could be modified. Maybe we'll have longer summers, longer golden ages, or long treacherous winters. But in the sense, the universe will always follow the supreme pattern. So this marks a great day because of recognizing what happens, as Manilius calls the hinge of the year, the blazing turning point when the sun is recalled and bends back the length of day. This notion of reversal seems to be common to all creatures, including the tortoise, the crayfish, and the lobster. In addition to the crab, which has been held to represent this constellation for Christians, this time of year has always been associated with John the Baptist, and his birth is celebrated on 24th of June, 3 days after the summer solstice, 6 months before. See, and this is another interesting fact, you know, to understand. Like, remember we were in Aries and we were talking about John the Baptist a lot. And now here we are in the chapter of Cancer. And who's coming up again? John the Baptist and Jesus, because the story is holographic. All of the shards are created. You could find it all in all of it. And at the same time, there's going to be a huge amount of chapters that are an aspect of that, like the solar truth, right, is the 13th. So it's going to be the Tao or the teacher or the Krishna. So like when Krishna is talking, sometimes that's just the 13. Sometimes that's just the sun, eternal truth. Sometimes it's filtered through one of the 12. So Mark has nothing about the birth of John, but is curious that he should recount his death. Precisely at the point in the narrative where Gemini crosses into Cancer, this could be purely ferocious, of course, but it could well be, as I suspect, the midsummer has been in some way connected with John from the very beginning of Christianity, at least from the time the Gospels were written. If this is so, when the implication is that Jesus was always associated with the midwinter solstice, 2, that the celebration of his birth on December 25th was part of the Christian mysteries from the earliest days and not simply a later concession to paganism as generally thought. See, a lot of this stuff is just misconstrued information. We think that, oh, it used to be this, it used to be that. Turns out, the whole time it was his birth, it's just the mysteries. Of course it is. Who else? There's no other way that you could look, and if it happened historically, you missed it. You won't get to see it. How would you feel? The Son of God came and went. You weren't there. Now you have to hear about it from people who weren't there either. Right? As if it was history. But if the Son does this every year, if this happens every year in our hearts, if this happens in a universal way, if that light being, as who was it that clarified this? Alvin Boyd Kuhn. That the light being that everyone sees when they die is Jesus Christ, but not the Jesus Christ, or Yeshua Christ, whatever, or Krishna, whatever you want to call it. It's not the same. It's not a history, but they are seeing it. It is someone. It is a person. Countless people, or Alvin Boyd Kuhn knows. Everyone knows that. Countless people have seen something, some higher figure, some higher being, some higher angel, and every culture may call it different. Helena Blavatsky says it's all in your imagination, but it's not. Perhaps she didn't say it exactly like that. Maybe I'm misquoting and need to maybe hold that back a bit. But in a sense, a lot of the impersonalist schools believe that, this is just just imagination, right? You're just imagining it. But Alvin Boyd Kuhn takes it on a higher note. It's not imagination. The Christ is a being. It is a higher, eternal, extra. It's super personal. And it's always been the voice of reason and wisdom of the ages. It's the voice of reason. Who does it? It's us. It's intelligence, but it can be concentrated outside of us. We don't have, there is miracles beyond. There are laws on each plane of existence, and each plane of existence has specific access to the amount of miraculous occurrence. So that's why we don't see a lot of people flying, around. If there are people who are levitating, it's very private, right? If it is true, right? Because I haven't personally seen it, but when I do, I'll know it's true and I can do it myself, and right now I believe it's true. But the point is maybe in another realm, that'll be something more occurrent, something with there's always less hinges as we ascend. So, the association of the solstice, so the axis for the stories of the birth of Jesus undoubtedly owes something to the ancient name of the constellation Cancer given by Erotos. And it says, crab the asses in the manger, often rendered as beehive, but more appropriately as manger, is still the conventional name of the cluster of stars in the center of this otherwise inconspicuous constellation. Jesus and John are always contrasted in the Gospels. In the first chapter, Mark John represents the passing age of Aries, which is giving way to the new age of Pisces. But there's also a contrast based upon the symbolism of the two solstice points. The light of the world is said to be born at the time of maximum darkness, when the light begins to grow. John is born when it starts to wane, hence Baptist enigmatic words in John's Gospel. He must increase as I must decrease. And let's throw esotericism in it. We just got the astrotheology, right? The light, the map. Now let's go in. Let's dive in and find out what happens. Who decreases in us? Is John the Baptist Satan? No. He's an element in us that's decreasing, that was once used and needed but now decreases. He's the enlightened intellect, as we've gone over in previous lectures. As that enlightened intellect gets you to where you need to go, it begins to decrease as the inner savior, the higher archetype, increases. Arjuna decreases as Krishna increases, as you merge with the higher tetraautagogic being, or the third logos, which is the highest aspect. Remember, we have triplicity: spirit, soul, lower, and human personality, right? But then you have this divided, lower and higher. The higher intellect can only take you to the soul, and then must decrease as you become exalted beyond it, essentially. See their exaltations and inner transformations. In the ancient world, Cancer and Capricorn, the two celestial signs, were considered the gates of incarnation. The human soul incarnates in Cancer, the divine in Capricorn. Homer alludes to this in Book 13 of the Odyssey, where Odysseus encounters two gates in the cave of Ithaca, to which two entries were, the one for man, to which the north breadeth, the other for the gods, on which the south bore no abodes for earthly men, but only deathless feet had their free way. So, of course, souls are always descending and ascending, and that is also biological, because there's always energies and new insights and talents and information and potential procreative faculties coming down, and there's always energies coming and rising up to the top of the head to be reestablished with the source. So as within, so without, that is also taking place without. And it does not necessarily you have to reincarnate here in the physical realm, but just remember those 7 planes above, you could kind of have some issues here until you're kind of at the top, right? So don't bound yourself to this plane. The Neoplatonist Porphyry, in his commentary on Homer, expounds the astrological significance of this passage. These two gates, These two gates are Cancer and Capricorn, but Plato calls them entrances. And of these, theologists say that Cancer is the gate through which souls descend, but Capricorn in which they ascend. Hence, climbing the mountain, or the goat climbing the mountain. If the men are born in Cancer and gods are born in Capricorn, we can better understand the contrasting roles of John the Baptist and Jesus in the gospel narrative. John represents everything that is good and noble. See, he's the enlightened, but he must decrease because he's still the being. He's still the person. Now he's identified. He's still him, right? And then the Christ, the I am, overtakes. It's the inner being. John the Baptist is like your higher mind, but then Jesus would represent what the higher mind is accessing, essentially. Because among these born of women there is no greater than John the Baptist, says Jesus, yet the one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. John epitomizes the human virtue, but Jesus, who tells us not to share what we have as John does, but to give it all away, epitomizes a qualitatively different way of being. John shows us how to live a human life. Jesus shows us how to live the divine life. John represents the old covenant, the Mosaic law, which takes us to the borders of the promised land. But Moses and this law do not take the people over the threshold. See, there's something that blocks you if you just stay in that kind of that enlightened intellect, the human. You have to cross over to the being, existential, transcendental. See, Moses couldn't go all the way, only to the border. John can't take us all the way, only to the border. It's the same character, it's the same story, the same mystery, same tradition. It's beautiful. Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, cardinal signs associated with different elements. Aries, cardinal fire. Cancer, cardinal water. Libra, cardinal air. Capricorn, cardinal earth. In the beautiful, simple imagery of the Zodiac, we see the tension that is produced in Cancer by the union of cardinality with water. Very interesting, very strong water. So now we're going to the next one. Leo. and we're going to go a bit into this until about 10 more minutes and then open it up. And, we'll continue going until we go through all of these. So, Leo, who am I? And also understanding the will, because Leo rules the I will and represents when Jesus is transfigured and the light is shining so brightly that they can't even see, which represents when the sun is at its strongest point in the northern hemisphere in the Leo months of the year. And we experience that when we actually activate our heart chakras. When our heart chakras, our faces glow like the sun, and our hair shines like the sun as well. But it has to do with the internal alchemical process. Like, if you're just a needy, greedy person, it ain't going to happen very easy. You have to actually have soul. You have to have compassion and understand that there's times where you're very selfish. There's times where that you're blocking this energy, you're blocking your inner self that wants to go out and volunteer and help others right now, feed the homeless. Like, if you don't have a sense of urgency, right, we need to activate this, right? We're all stagnant through Age of Aquarius, down pulses from the society that we live in. Everything is stagnating. We can't let it stagnate. We have to withdraw the fire from the water, activate the Leo will. If we don't follow that, the story we don't go on with the story. Our lives just stay mediocre. We never, we need to reach out and actually help and change other people, help, not force it on them, but be a light, right? Be a light unto others that attract like moths. But the result is different, right? So, one who knows everything else, but who does not know himself, knows nothing. Gospel of Thomas, know thyself. The sign of Leo, says Ptolemy, as a whole is hot and stifling. And from a pure meteorological point of view, he is absolutely right. The days from late July to late August are the dies caraculae of the Romans, the dog days, named after Sirius, the dog star, whose helical rising 400 years before the Christian era corresponds with the sun's entrance into the constellation Leo, the hottest time of the year. Even King Herod, on a negative aspect, is Leo, the sun, King Herod, in a negative aspect, see? But the positive is Jesus of the Lion tribe of Judah. And also how Leo is opposite of Aquarius. We're in the age of Aquarius, so we're working with the forces of Leo as well. All humanity is activating their heart chakras and their inner knowing on various levels. When Sirius parts his head and knees and the body is dried up by the reason of heat, then sit in the shade and drink. Leo, the fire sign, is the sign of sunshine, the only one of the 12 zodiac signs said to be ruled by the sun. Marks the point of the sun's greatest northerly declination. See, because Aries is the sun, the baby, the coming of the Lamb of God, right? And then the Leo, that's the true being. Aries initiates. Leo, you come into actualization. And then that's the lion and the lamb. It's very interesting because some Bibles used to say lion and the lamb. Now they say lion and the wolf, but the movie that I've seen says lion and the lamb as well. It's just been very strange. But we all know that the lion and the lamb is the supreme symbolism. The head, ram, the heart, lion. And when we make our mind, our higher mind, rest with our higher emotional ideals, and they lie with each other, because usually they're at unrest, right? Our minds are noble in these areas and trying this, but our hearts are noble in these areas and trying this, and they fight. Or if they're negatively polarized, then they're still in intolerance with each other. But usually the lion eats the lamb, right? Usually our hearts end up overpowering our mind, logic, or thinking, rationality. And so of course, with the lion laying with the lamb, that'll be great, right? Because the day our hearts and minds will stop fighting. So Leo marks its point of the maximum power. Its metal is gold, the royal metal, and in the zodiacal man, it corresponds with the heart, the central fire of the body upon which all other organs depend. For the Jews, it represents the tribe of Judah, the lion's whelp. And remember, it wasn't in Freemasonry we learned from Manly P. Hall, or the lion's grip of initiation, right? They grip you with the lion's grip as you come out of that death state of resurrection into summer, to your new being, to do away with the old bean, to do away with the old wine bottles and containers, and to put on the new. So that's what we're doing here. And yep. Oh, we're gonna keep going. Nick, do you have anything to put in, man?
No, nothing too much. So far, it's really interesting stuff. Two things that what was just on my mind earlier was even earlier when you mentioned how that like in the beginning you were talking about how like the whole thing of like people are saying like we are all one, but then I only just got up like roughly an hour ago. I had a bit of a restless night last night, so my mind's a little over the
Oh
place
man,
again.
don't worry, man. I feel like yeah, that just life is life, man. I like what you're saying. You're saying that you like the one in the many part.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, how early how some of the teachings get a little mixed up. How like it kind of takes away from the individualization of the soul. At least I remember getting from it. Um,
And then
and
it takes away from the individuality of divinity, right? Because like
yeah,
I love you know, like I've always wondered, you know, like Santos is the reason why I started listening to Vaishnava tradition.
hmm,
And Vaishnava is a great tradition, and right, not to become, right? We're Prisca theologians. We don't have to go off and like become anything, right? We know things, but we love them, right? We love traditions. We love truth. We love understanding, and from the Vaishnava understanding, the supreme, and same with others. I've seen similarities too, that they just believe that the supreme mother, father, God is like a separate emanation, that we emanate from that, like that's our blueprint, that, and they are not lost or confused inside of their own realm. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like in Western Christianity you have the two polarities too, right? You have deists who believe, let's see, yep, I think we talked about this last time.
hmm,
Deists believe that God, you know, when we say God, right, Eloah is the female god in the Bible. It was in there 459 times.
hmm,
Elohim is, there is Adonai, Al Chai, Lord of the Earth. There is male names for God. Okay,
yeah,
great. There's female names for God. Great. There's no need to argue about it. And I'm not saying you, Nick. I'm just saying for whoever's out there to
yeah,
understand that this is just outdated language. So when we refer to God, we know that in all the traditions, there's the mother has been hidden. So of course she's relevant. At least in the Hindu tradition, she's more there. Like there's more female names for God. Radha, lot. They have nine, more than nine probably. There's just plenty, and there's male too, and there's no like one over the other. So, and we know and we talked in the last lesson how Mary was more divinized at a time, archetypally seen as more divine than they try to make her out to be or whatever.
yeah,
So just a bunch of confusion.
yeah,
So, but there's nothing wrong with believing that your source has an intact self consciousness outside of you, that is you can become and be with and come onto an example, something to attain to, that is holding everything else together, right? But like deists, right, they believe that like God created you here and then kind of leaves that to itself, a self, creates a self-existing construct of beings and environments and situations, and like with the faculties that you're given, they are nourished and developed to be able to come out of it. But there's no help other than you able to pray to or like acts as your higher help that's in your toolbox. God's not thinking, Nick, you better not get that job, or Nick, you better get this or that. It's just, Nick, you're out of the house.
hmm,
Right? Since day one though. Now, theists, on the other hand, they don't believe that. Theists are more like the Vaishnavas and other, like, well, Vaishnava's kind of mixed. I'd say more esoteric Christian, and like esoteric Quran and things of that nature. They believe that God is personally actually involved, motherly and fatherly. Father more aloof, just like fathers are, but motherly, it's involved, very involved. So, and it's concentrated elsewhere than everywhere. It's everywhere in us. It's us where people are. God is present, but it's also in a concentrated area. There's no need for me. I'm important, but like when I pass away, I know that anyone who didn't pass away is still going to be here, right? I mean, even if you believe that technically, oh, are you sure it's happening? What happens here, right? This is the realm of effect. I know, like, you could really go into thinking, like, it didn't really happen, right? You mean you fell asleep to this realm and it all just, everyone else disappeared with you, right?
Yeah.
It's true, but, like, we witnessed, then you have to, it's just an illusion that other people are passing away and you're still here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just hard to say that there's not, like, there's tombstones here from eternity. Like, it's almost like what's marked in Malkuth in this physical realm is marked. It's eternal. Like, whatever you do here, whatever you decide to do is eternal here. Depending on what it is, correct?
Yeah.
Like, if it's not gone with the wind, right?
Yeah.
But to think that it's not just you. We're collectively here and share a realm that if you succeed and I don't, that's great for you and that sucks for me. We don't all just wait, it's not, it's a little bit more than that, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Like, our actions here do echo, like, even outwards as well. Like, what we do here still carries with us. Otherwise, what's the point of coming here? If, like, I still remember from the book of, I still need to finish reading about the.
Well, it's because, right, people think that it's just the experience, right? It's just an experience. So there is no, like, all your, but we don't know. Didn't we know that all the ancient traditions have adherence to their ancestors and know that the ancestor realm still is intact until some family members pass on, and that it is important. There is life after, there is continuation. If you really study the esoteric traditions and don't let the new age garb you, there's a lot of beautiful, interesting knowledge to be beheld.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Right? And potentials.
Yeah. Yeah. And from the book, wow, suddenly the name escapes me. The fire of the initiation. Yeah, like I mentioned, like it's a classroom, right? It's like, imagine like going to school, but then suddenly like everything you've learned in school or diplomas that you've gained suddenly just mean nothing. And at which point, like, this realm was made for a reason. We are here to actually do something, and whether it's to do something on the physical realm here to influence in some way, or even just to learn ourselves, or both even. Like,
Yep.
it does have purpose.
A continuation after you get what you put in.
Yeah. And yeah,
so it's an input-output realm, right?
Yeah.
You don't come in a nice essence, behave like a delinquent, and then or a horrible, disgusting person, and then just get shot out the other side a cream puff. Like it doesn't work like that. You're gonna come out exactly what you became here.
Yeah.
And there's either or you're either densifying or humidifying.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like, or decaying on a soul level, even perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, what's the point? Because, this life is, I've always been saying, like, I'm sure, and I've already said it, like, multiple times, like, life's a crucible, and, like, the fire of life, the challenges as well, like, we either forge ourselves into something stronger or we wither beneath the flame. And become something less. And, thus we either start ascending back up to the higher realms, or we go back down to the lower realms of perdition.
Yep, which are more monotonous, long, dense, boring.
Yeah.
And desires that can't be quenched, right?
Yeah.
Unquenchable thirst. Hungry ghosts, as they call them.
Yeah.
Meaning that, at least here in the physical realm, if you're not a hungry ghost, you can actually get some sort of satisfaction out of desire. As a hungry ghost, you can't.
Yeah.
At least as a human, if you stay under the natural law of things, like you can have a nice, whatever you want, like a cup of tea, right? And it tastes good. That's fine, right? So like, and then you could feel like, oh, I had a tea, nice, or like, you can. There's things that you can have like a sense of satisfaction here in this physical realm.
Yeah.
Like they like, if you manage your desires well and you elevate yourself, you can manage. But in other lower realms, like those hankerings don't go away, and you can see people start to go into those lower realms by how they're the hankering for those things, the dissatisfaction they are with food, sex, life, job, sometimes just living, right?
Yeah.
We can see that like they become, it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's not satisfied. Whereas a normal, healthy person can find a balanced amount of satisfaction of desire to where they can actually have their life cleaned up to a point where they could take a deep breath and say, you know what? I enjoyed what I've done. I've felt remorse for the things I've done wrong. I've forgiven those who've done them to me. And I feel that what I've had has satisfied me to the point where I can exhale and say, you know what? It was okay. Rather than the hungry ghost who is saying, oh no, I hate that person. I can't stand that if I died and they were happy, it would wrench me and I want to hurt them. And, these are very different thought patterns. Nonetheless, true.
Yeah.
There are people that hanker until their deathbed will still be having horrible resentments, hatred, anger, lust, vindictiveness, and they will haunt these people. They will want to incarnate into these people. They will want to suffer and drink and lust, but they can't until they until that, it's just like a. But then they always say like hell's eternal. But what's funny is that Jesus went down and saved souls from hell in the Bible. Is that just a one-time deal?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
kind of sucks if it was, right?
Yeah, it would. Yeah, just opportunity come and gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of what you're saying just seems very akin to just addiction. People get addicted either by its drugs, whether it's dopamine hits from like games or anything else.
Yeah, it's almost. But then you can even get addiction to like murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's murders that you're addicted to killing. They don't know why they do it. They
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
horrible. Like what? How far can addiction go?
Yeah, like it's really something that can really degrade someone. It's like first you get the first it's just like, you just want to keep constantly feeding on something, whatever it is, like whether it's killing, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, food, something. I don't know. Yeah, take your pick. There's lots of different addictions. And then slowly, then it's just like, okay, at first it seems like something satisfying, but then you want to go back to it. But then afterwards, that same hit doesn't do the same thing. So now you want to go more, more. Then you get a little bit more. And then that satisfies you for a little while, but then then that stops being satisfying. Then you start hungering for more and more and more. It just starts consuming you from within. And and then yeah, then just keeps spiraling downwards and downwards. Um, and, and then, yeah, just going back to like Jesus going down to hell to save the souls as well. I mean, that's obviously just like learning, whether getting that spark of inspiration to suddenly it's like, what, I don't want to be addicted to this anymore. Now I'm going to start fighting it. Now I'm going to start overcoming it.
Instead of the one-time historical gig.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like, oh, if only I lived, however many years ago, centuries ago, then maybe I would have been fine. But nope, Jesus is now back in heaven, hanging out with the angels or whatnot. Now I'm stuck down here.
Dude, this is a classic, man. This is such a great class. I'm gonna relate. This is a great one, dude. I really love this. Nick, you're awesome. I love this conversation, man.
Thanks, man.
So dude, I think we're gonna close it up now. Unless you have any questions, this was awesome. I just love this conversation, man. This is great. So it was good being here with you, man.
Yeah, same thing with you, man. Like, I always love your stuff. And yeah, I'm sure you've heard this praise many times, man, but your stuff is fucking awesome.
Oh man, I know, man. I'm just here. So love you, Nick, man. Peace.
Yeah, you too, Chris. Oh, and gracias, Brandon. No sé si estuvo, si hay otro, pero gracias por todo también.